Chapter 1. /N. I don't own MHA or any Naruto references here. A small child, with emerald green hair and diamond-like freckles, stood there looking at the two people that were now on the floor, covered in their own blood and sand. His emerald eyes didn't blink at the sight, only moving when he heard the sobbing of H's mother in the corner. He looked up at her, and his eyes that were deranged gained a sense of familiarity and warmth at her. "He broke our bond, Mommy," the 4-year-old said to his mother, a woman with similar green hair and had small amounts of blood from the two murdered people, one of which was her husband and the father of the kid who just murdered him. "He broke your heart, so I had to break his." Inko was still in shock at the scene, but had dialed for the authorities to show up. She didn't know what to say and was hoping her son wouldn't attack her as well. "Izuku, sweetie." She tried to speak as calmly as she could, despite the sand that was moving around her son. "Yes, Mommy?" Izuku asked innocently, like he wasn't the one who had used his quirk, a unique power each person is born with, to kill his father and the woman his father was caught cheating with. "Could you please put away the sand?" She didn't know if it would anger him and make his sand lash out at her. "Huh?" The child looked at his sand that was still moving around the area hectically. Then he gained a scared look.
"I'm sorry, Mommy."
"I didn't mean to scare you." The sand all dropped to the ground but flowed to the child's feet, surrounding the limbs. He began to start crying.
"I'm sorry, Mommy."
Inko's motherly instincts kicked in and she grabbed her son in a hug. "It's okay, Izuku." As far as she knew, her son was just mentally disturbed, but at least it was good for her that he doesn't want to harm her in any way. When the police came, it took some effort from Inko to get Izuku to not lash out at them. He fought against any attempt to separate him from his mother's side, and his sand made it something no one wanted to attempt. A 20-year-old hero was called in because his quirk was to erase other quirks from being able to function momentarily. He kept his eyes on Izuku at all times, keeping his sight-based quirk ready at a moment's notice to get rid of the child's control of that sand that followed him everywhere. Currently, Inko was being questioned by a police officer about what had occurred in her apartment. During that, Izuku was still holding onto her leg with his sand swirling around his feet and that unhinged look in his eyes. Inko began to tell what had transpired from a minute before it happened. "I had just come home from taking Izuku to the doctor after I got home from work, when we both found my husband with another woman. I admit I was angry and shouted at him before he struck me to get me to be quiet. Then Izuku used his sand too. Daddy didn't want to give his heart to Mommy, so I broke it apart." Izuku filled in unnecessarily, admitting to murdering his father. The officer gave a worried look to Inko. He was definitely not at ease around this kid. The boy definitely had something wrong with his head. And the other woman? Right after killing his father, Izuku killed her with his sand. Inko was very aware of the sand that was following her son everywhere and gathering in a swiping pattern at his feet. It definitely bothered her when it would brush against her. "She wasn't Mommy," Izuku added. "Ma'am, does your son suffer from any mental disorders? I don't mean to be rude, but he—" The officer just looked at the boy who was staring back with those insane eyes. "Our doctor, Yuma Aiken, had said something about the possibility when he developed his quirk last week. She said he might have a quirk-based mental disorders, but the checkup today still needed to be looked at before she was supposed to call me later." Inko didn't want to think that her son had a mental disorder, but the way that he has been acting definitely made it plausible. "I think that he should be put into quirk reformation regardless," the pro-hero who was keeping his eye on Izuku said. "He clearly doesn't see how his murder of them is wrong and will end up using his sand to kill again." Inko wanted to argue and say her son wasn't a killer, but she was there when he did in fact kill. "It definitely would be best." The officer agreed. "There is nothing wrong with me?" The child got confused. He truly didn't see anything wrong with what he did. His dad hurt his mom, so he hurt his dad in return. What was wrong with that? He looked up at his mother, hoping she would tell them that he wasn't wrong, that he was her little angel. "Mom." Inko avoided the gaze of her son. "It would be best." Izuku felt his heart break and his sand began to vibrate more chaotically, before it stopped completely as the pro-hero activated his own quirk to negate Izuku's. His sand stopped moving and dropped wherever it was. "I will take him there." the pro-hero said as he kept his eyes on the child.
Now.
Inko had a worried look. Ma'am, he isn't going to go through regular quirk reformation. He needs more attention because his quirk is able to kill without him having to take a single step. If he truly does have a mental disorder, it will take more effort to make him understand how things actually work.
Infine.
Izuku argued as he held onto Inko's leg harder. His unhinged eyes had a frantic look to them now. Does he have to be separated from me? Inko asked, partially from not wanting her son taken away, and partially because she was sure he would not react well to it. If she is the thing that is keeping him from flipping out, it would be wise to not separate them. The officer pointed out. She can accompany him to the place at the least. The pro-hero nodded. Keep him calm. He began to walk away, leading them to the facility in Mizutofu, Japan, where quirk reformation happens. Matsuo Sekai took a breath as he finished looking at a scan a few hours later. Matsuo was a doctor who studied brains and how quirks have effects on them. Every person's brain and thought process is affected by their quirk, although most people are affected in a way that is so insignificantly small that it is ignored. However, some people, like the child he just scanned, get affected in a more noticeable way. It was seen more easily in people who had quirks that had to do with or changed their blood in any way. This child's quirk, however, was definitely unique in how it worked. He doesn't spend much thought just to move his sand around, and even if his quirk is suppressed, the sand will follow him. He just couldn't manipulate it to do anything. It moved around him defensively anytime he felt worried and reacted to his emotions. His brain, however, was what got Matsuo's attention. He had a slightly higher level of thought processing than most intelligent adults, most likely to help his sand, but had clear insanity. It was small before his quirk awakened, but after his quirk began to grow, his view of everything around him was also altering. The boy completely believes to be in the right about his murder of his father and his mistress. His emotional aptitude was all over the place as well. He had emotions, but they were too extreme in every action he had. From what Matsuo saw, he would also be quick to extreme anger as well, and with his sand that meant trouble for everyone. He would end up being obsessive and dangerous if he wasn't trained to behave normally. This kid was definitely a piece of work. I believe he should definitely go through quirk reformation, Matsuo said to Inko and the pro-hero, who had not once stopped looking at the boy to keep his sand dormant. There are 5 levels to quirk reformation, and given his situation, it would be irresponsible to put him in anything below level 4. Level 5 is where he should be. He isn't that bad, is he? Inko asked quietly, hoping Izuku would stay in his daydreaming state he had entered. I'm sorry, ma'am, but the records we got from your family doctor did not show any severity of his disorder before the last week. If he is already at this level, then the right thing to do is stop the ground with as quickly as possible. He can definitely reform, but it will definitely be some work. What happens in level 5? Anyone who qualifies as level 4 or 5 is taken to a separate facility where they will stay until they show signs of being able to control their stability and not act out uncontrollably. It should at most take him a few years. He is being taken away? Inko deep down knew it was for the best, but the mother in her didn't want that. You can still see him, Matsuo responded. It's this way that the people can be watched better and make sure they are properly reformed. Where am I going? Izuku started paying attention when he heard his mother ask her last question. Will he actually be properly cared for? Inko asked. Miss Midoriya, you have my word that we take reformation very seriously. Izuku will be handled with care. What is happening? Izuku asked. You do have precautions to avoid his quirk acting out, correct? The pro-hero asked the doctor, everyone ignoring the child. The facility will have measures to make sure he doesn't act out. Izuku shook his mom's pants leg to get her attention. Mommy, what is happening? Inko had a sad expression when she looked down at her son. She didn't know how to explain it to him correctly without saying something that could damage his already warped mind. You are this? Miss Midoriya, let us take it from here, please. Matsuo asked. Izuku, you are being taken to a place that we can help you and your sand. I don't want help. The kid didn't hesitate to respond with a dark look at the doctor. He saw this man as a threat because to Izuku it looked like he was trying to separate Izuku and his mom. Son, you're sand dash. You're not my dad. Izuku didn't like being called son. He didn't have a father, Not even the person who was his father counted to him anymore since that man ruined his relationship with Izuku's mom. Matsuo looked up to the pro-hero, who was still using his eyes to keep Izuku from doing anything with his eyes. How long can you hold that power? I need to rest my eyes soon. The man replied. I suggest sedating him for now, until you move him to the facility because I doubt he is going to go along with this. You're not taking me away from mommy. Izuku shouted and held onto Inko's leg harder. A guard was called over, a woman who actually had a quirk where she can send someone into unconsciousness with eye contact, and she promptly tried to make eye contact with the sand-wielding child. When she finally did, she admitted to herself that it was unnerving to see how intense Izuku's eyes were, like he was definitely insane. Izuku almost fell over from being sent into unconsciousness but was caught by the pro-hero, who turned to Matsuo. Where is this facility at? I will take you there. It has high security, so you will need someone like me or a pass to get in. I already sent over the file for him, so they should have something ready when we get there. Matsuo turned to Inko, who hadn't moved since her son was knocked out. He will be okay, ma'am. Inko nodded, hoping that her son would end up all right. When Izuku woke up, he was in a white room. It had a bed with white sheets and a single pillow, and a shelf with a few books on it. There was also a desk with a new blank journal on it, and a chair to match the desk. What was most interesting to him was the large block of metal in the middle of the room. It looked like it was a box, and he saw a single key slot to open it and nothing else. Hello, Midoriya. A voice from the doorway got his attention, and the teen saw a woman with bright orange hair and a ponytail, small yellow eyes, and a lab coat. She had a very noticeable scar along the right side of her jawline that was a sickly gray in color. I am Sayuri Kamodi. Where am I? Where is mommy? The 5-year-old asked. The woman sat at the chair to the desk. This place is called Cherry Waters Rehabilitation Center. Miss Midoriya is okay and at home right now. Why am I here? I want mommy. Izuku felt scared for a second and heard a sound of buzzing from the box on the floor. She will visit in the allowed time 2 days from now. Izuku, you have a disease, and being here will make it better. I'm not sick. He tried to use his sand and became aware of the fact that none of it was around him, except the box. Where is my sand? It is in there. The woman pointed to the box. The sand was out in there for everyone's safety. Nothing can get in or out of the boxes unless they have one of these keys. She tapped on the key that was around her neck. I want my sand. Izuku tried to open the box despite what he was just told. You will get it back eventually. You have to prove you are better from your disorder first. Izuku didn't like this woman, or that other guy, and the one who kept him from using his sand. They all took him from his mom. He wanted out of the place because he knew he wasn't suck or having a disorder like they were saying. They just were afraid of his sand. Izuku needed his sand back so he can get back to his mom. Over the next few months, Izuku got little sleep. He would stay up as long as he could, sometimes for days, trying to use his sand despite them being locked in a metal box that was cemented to the ground. True to the doctor's word, there was seemingly nothing short of her key that would get his sand released. During the classes he had at that facility, he only paid partial attention, just enough to make them believe he was there and not trying to gain his sand back. Every time his mother would visit, he tried his hardest to convince her that he was okay and that he wanted to go home, or that he didn't want her to leave him there. Every time she had to leave, it was a very unpleasant feeling for Izuku. He blamed the facility for keeping him away from his mom, wanting to bury the place in his sand if he had that much of it. He only had as much sand to make a life-size to scale sand statue of himself, but it was all still in that box. Izuku could feel his sand. It was calling to him, begging to get to him, and he used, but it was trapped. He didn't like it. He actually hated it, and it made him have a silent resentment of the facility. He knew he couldn't be vocal of his disdain of the place because that would make them view him as more mentally disturbed when he wasn't at all. He had to find a way to his sand. Thank you for coming, Nizu. Sayuri Kamodi said to the person next to her. This is of interest to me. Of course I would come. Nizu waved it off. Nizu was a small person, barely taller than a 4-year-old, and wasn't even a human. He was actually a rare case of an animal gaining a quirk. What animal Nizu was exactly was a mystery, however. The quirked animal looked like a mix of a mouse and a bear with white fur, a scar along his right eye, and a tail. He had a suit and brown boots on. I haven't heard of a case as severe as his before, and I wanted to extend help. You just contacted me before I could contact you. He has pretty shut himself off from people since the accident a week ago, Sayuri stated. Run me through the accident. Nizu had heard about Bit seeing as how it out the facility on lockdown and 2 guards had gotten injured. He was behaving well, but after the accident I believe it was an act so we wouldn't be as suspicious. We knew he had been spending days at a time, not sleeping and using his spare time to try to break his sand out of the box. The sensors inside of it confirmed that he was trying to do that. So he didn't break his sand out? Nizu had a confused look. From what I heard, he had sand. Part of our outside area has sand in it. He had never shown control of any sand beyond the sand that followed him every. He must have been practicing in secret, or just get her that higher control in that moment. He was allowed outside with the others to have some time to enjoy the Adar and such, but he avoided the others like he always does. At first I assumed that was because the closest person to him in age was 17, a decade older than him. However, I want to think he brushes everyone off, because he believes they are not important enough to waste his time on. He always went to the sand and stayed there. He could have been practicing his control of sand, or just being around other sand to make up for not being able to have contact with his actual batch. Nizu said. When time was up for him to be outside a guard, Sotashi tried to inform him of the time, but Midoriya did not listen. He just stayed sitting in the sand. Sotashi tried to step closer and Midoriya took that as a threat and lashed out with the sand around him. Sotashi had his arm broken and Nero tried to step in only to have her leg broken by the sand. What put a stop to the boy? Nizu asked as they got to outside of Izuku's room that was locked. A sedative. When he went unconscious, we put him in his room, and the new sand didn't follow like his original sand. I theorized that he can control any sand with effort, but his original batch is the only batch will follow him regardless. I would like to speak to him one-on-one. Nizu said. He might not open up to people associated with the facility here. I'm a principal of a school, so I might have a chance. I suppose I can allow it. The woman nodded. I request that, though. He pointed to an object on her person. I don't think that is wise. Sayuri held the small object. It will be a way to show I trust him. That and Nizu knew how much Izuku must despise being at that place. This would help him be at ease. I trust your judgment, I suppose. The woman took the key from around her neck and handed it to the quirked animal. Thank you. Nizu took the key. I will try to just see where his mind is at from his perspective. He entered the room alone to find Izuku just sitting against the box his sand was in. Nizu had to admit the boy looked to be in bad condition. Had he not known that it was all the boy's actions that made him look like that, he would immediately question the integrity of the people running this place. It wasn't as bad as it might seem, but he really looked like he needed to eat more and definitely get sleep. Izuku's eyes had dark rings, or uendi them from lack of sleep. Other than that, his eyes were just alarming to Nizu. The pupils were so small they were almost non-existent, and he could feel the barely hidden insanity the boy had. Nizu always thought quirks were fascinating, but he never liked when quirks warped a person's mind like this boy's. Granted, it was partially Izuku's own fault, and his surroundings as well. Izuku wasn't saying anything but was keeping his eyes locked onto Nizu. Hello, Izuku Midoriya. The animal greeted him as he entered and closed the door. I am Nizu. I just wanted to chat. You wanted to see how crazy you think I am. The boy spoke up. I'm not. Nizu decided honesty was the best policy. It is true that I wanted to see how you were mentally, but that was actually a side thing to why I really came. I heard about what happened last week through the grapevine, and your quirk is interesting. My sand? Control of sand is something I found interesting. I have met people who control fire, water, wind, people who can make poison, people who can change their size and so on. But sand, and at your level of control? I have not seen it before, and I wanted to see it for myself. Why? Can't I just be curious?
No.
You wouldn't be here just to see someone move sand. Izuku showed his lack of trust. I admit I had a motive beyond that as well. Nizu heard that the boy was smart. That showed it. It either showed that he was smart or really paranoid and untrusting. I believe that you can definitely prove to not be crazy or disturbed or anything like that. I was going to see if you were interested in becoming a hero in your future. One of the pro heroes that dash.
No.
Izuku cut him off. I don't need to prove anything to anyone. That can be true. However, I believe dash. I don't care. Izuku cut him off again. I only wanted to be like my father before he turned out to be a horrible person and break mother's heart. I don't plan on doing that anymore, and I am not going to do something you think I should do. I just want to go back home and have all of you leave me alone. He stopped looking at Nizu and faced forward towards the door again. Nizu had a blank expression. He knew the boy would be difficult to talk to, but the boy just didn't even plan on listening to anyone. He was only focused on going home. Nizu wasn't going to open the box today for sure. He didn't even think he could get anything else out of the boy at that point. The quirked animal waited for a moment to see if Izuku would change his mind and try to conversate, but the boy didn't move at all. He just sat there, not even blinking. I hope you become well, Midoriya, the mouse said as he got up and left, picking the door behind him. Nizu never noticed the sand that had fallen from the key he had with him. The second the door was closed, a grin came onto Izuku's face, and his eyes lit up. He had been using sand that he had hidden in his shoes the week prior to copy the shape of the key that he knew Nizu had the second he mentioned wanting to see Izuku's sand. Now, all he had to do was wait for a good moment, and he would have his actual sand back. He left the sand from his shoe in a hardened form that mimicked the key to the box and made it stay on the underside of his bed. He would wait for night, get his sand back, break out of this place and go back home to his mom. I am quite surprised that he is that shut in, Nizu admitted to Sayuri as they went down a hall. His obsessive nature must be affecting how he perceives others. He doesn't like the facility, so he is relating all of us here as something bad, and will no doubt continue to try his hardest to not have anything to do with anything or anyone here. Honestly, I halfway want to just let him leave, so he will not be here since he is obviously driving himself further into his insanity being here. That would just be dangerous for everyone else, Nizu said. Although I do understand the sentiment. Perhaps he is just going through a phase at this point, even if that phrasing of mine is crass. Night came and Izuku was ready. He had waited all day, something that proved to be a challenge, but it was now night and he went to the box, making his sand replica of the key enter the box and keeping its shape as he used it to unlock the box. He had wanted to try all week to open the box with the small amount of sand he had, but he wasn't sure if a failed attempt at opening it would alert the guards that he was trying to open it. So he waited until that Dr. Sayuri Kamodi would enter the room, so he could use the sand to copy the key. Problem was she never did. It would always be someone else. Luck was on his side when Nizu had the key earlier in the day. The box unlocked and the silent alarm unknown to Izuku went off. His sand key didn't have the chip that the real key had, so when it did unlock, a signal was sent to the security room. Izuku was thrilled when for the first time in 2 years his sand flowed around him. His actual sand that belonged to him from the second he gained his quirk. It was a pleasant feeling. He mixed the key back into grains of sand and let it join his actual sand the way that any sand actually does, with his blood. Izuku made a cut on his palm through a quick slice of his sand and made the new sand go into the wound, getting covered with his blood and joining his true sand as it soaked it in. Once that was over, he had some sand cover the cut so his blood wouldn't leak everywhere and made his way to leave that damned place forever. Somehow Midoriya broke open his box. A guard said into the radio as he saw the alarm. He has his sand again. I should have kept it somewhere else. Sayuri cursed as she began to grab a sedative to use on the boy. She left that box with him as a show that he wasn't imprisoned. He would no doubt act violently towards everyone who he encountered on his way out of the facility at this point. I see him on the cameras, a guard said as she watched the boy walk through the hallways unchallenged so far. He is heading to the garden. Why would he be heading to the garden? To get the sand there? He couldn't fly, so there was no point to that idea. Unless, he is going to escape through the garden. Sayuri swore that she would bang her head against a wall if that kid can use his sand to fly. Izuku stepped into the garden and looked up at the moon. It was something he found interesting. However, he couldn't waste time, so he quickly made part of his sand solid enough to support his weight and stepped onto it. Midoriya, stop, Sayuri ordered as she managed to get into the garden. Izuku looked at her with his insane eyes. I would kill you if I didn't want to taint my sand before I reunited with Mother. She held up her tranquilizer gun. Midoriya, this will hurt you if you start to leave. I don't care. Izuku began to float up with his sand as a mobile platform. Damn it. Sayuri shot the dart at Izuku and gaped as some of his sand immediately blocked the dart, without the boy even moving a muscle and looking at the dart like it was pathetic. He didn't say a word as the dart fell through his sand to the ground of the garden, and he left at a high speed. The orange-haired woman looked at the now empty space above the garden. She exhaled sharply as she grabbed her radio. Someone get the local authorities. Izuku had made sure to be far enough away from the facility before he would make his return to his mother before he realized something. He didn't even know the way home from here. None of the buildings looked familiar, and it has been 2 years. How will he actually find his way home? Izuku buried that thought. He would find his way home no matter what. Maybe he can use someone for directions. How do you let a 7-year-old play you like that? A police officer asked no one in particular when his partner told him the situation. They said his sand is very powerful. His partner, a man with tusks for a quirk, replied. I honestly want to ignore it because they said he has no problems just murdering anyone who tries to get in his way. That's actually a good reason to find him. The first officer said. He could be anywhere in Mizuta for right now. And he can fly, so this is even more of a hassle. Didn't they say he wanted to find his mother? Why not just wait for him around there? That could work. Let's work on where she lives then. Suddenly a pile of sand dropped on top of their car, covering the windshield completely. What the fuck? The tusked officer jumped in his seat. Where is my mother? Both officers jumped when the driver's side had a boy outside of the car, standing on a floating platform of sand. He was looking at them with intensity, expecting an answer fast. The first officer did not like how that boy was just there so quickly. He was going to play along with the child, so as to not get killed with sand. We can't help you find your mother unless we have a name for you, kid. Izuku Midoriya. He responded dryly. My mother's name is Izuku Midoriya. You heard him, Fukashi. He looked to his tusk having partner with an expression that said to look her up that second. Look her up so we can get him to his mother. Fukashi nodded as he noticed some sand had filtered into the car. No doubt the boy was planning on being aggressive if they didn't comply. He typed on his computer and soon had an address. Thank you. Izuku had read the address over his shoulder. I won't kill you, he said to the two as his sand retreated back to him, and he immediately flew up and away from them. The two officers were silent for a second. Fuck me, that kid is terrifying. Fukashi slumped into his seat. Well, now we can let everyone know exactly where he is going to be. The first officer snapped back into character and grabbed his radio. Izuku didn't know a direct path to his mother's apartment, so he kind of ended up wandering for a bit as he tried to find it. He wouldn't have let those officers take him there because he didn't trust them beyond what they did tell him. They would definitely make him go back to that place. He wouldn't go back. They would take away his sand again, and he will not let that happen. He eventually found his way to the area his mother lived. Knowing it was there because of the police around the area, they were there for him. They were trying to keep his family separated, and he did not like that. He wouldn't lash out at them yet. No, he had to wait because he didn't want their blood on his sand when he returns to his mother. Izuku stopped on the roof of a building when it dawned on him. The police were there. Of course he knew they were there. He could see them. But he realized they were all there, and that blocked his plans. They definitely had someone with his mother, and he wouldn't be able to stay there if they were watching. He would have to wait just long enough that they aren't with her. He didn't know where he would wait, so he decided to go somewhere else for the time being. Maybe somewhere with sand. Hours later, Sayuri was cursing herself under her breath. How could she let that brat go? She had the perfect soldier for her master if she had just kept him at the facility for just a little bit longer, when he would actually be able to come grab the child for himself. Now she had to explain to her master that the insane kid with the powerful quirk was just missing. They expected him to arrive at his mother's place that night, and he never did, even when 2 officers had confirmed he had the address. Where could the brat have gone? Inko was panicking. She had trusted this facility to treat her son well, but he broke out of the place and was gone. She knew he really had some mental problems, but she wanted to believe that he wouldn't just up and run away. She also wanted her son to show up to her at the least, so she could know if he was safe. Hello, All Might. Nizu said as the man of that title entered the office for the meeting Nizu asked for.
Ah hello Nezu.
How are you today? The booming voice of All Might came out of the phone. I have confirmed an ally of his, Nizu said as he looked at some papers he had gathered up. You have? Indeed. A woman named Sayuri Kamodi. She works at the Cherry Waters Quirk Reformation Center. I gather from my intel that she was using that position to find any persons who were not healthy mentally and to coax them into joining him. Exploiting the mentally ill? Why am I not surprised? We should count ourselves lucky with the spectacle that occurred last night. A child with a mindset all too perfect for one of his followers was under her direct watch. What happened to the child? Oh, he made a grand escape from the facility. I actually find it humorous that he used me like he did. He used you? All Might raised one of his eyebrows. How so? I had the key to a box that they hid his sand from him. Oh, his quirk is to control sand, by the way. It seems really versatile. He had some sand and used it to replicate the key I had with me. I felt the sand just enough to know it was there, but he did a good job of it. He used that to get his own sand back and he left the facility without harming anyone like you would expect, and now is missing in Mizudafu. Why would you willingly let him have a way to escape? Because he would end up transferred away from her if it was a failed escape. I truthfully didn't think he would get away. Is that why you asked for me to come to Mizudafu? Indeed. He seems quite skilled with the sand if I am going by assumptions, and only a few people can properly handle him to pacify him. I am sure any of the trained adult heroes in Mizudafu can handle a child. All Might replied. He knew Nizu wasn't just saying these things, but he also didn't think that kid was as much as Nizu said. He killed 2 people with a single blow to each of their hearts when he was 5. Nizu responded. Now he is 7. I saw him yesterday, All Might. He definitely isn't above killing. I looked at his file from the facility. I believe Kamodi is the only soy of his there, by the way, and he has violent rage that made them sedate him a few times. A high level of obsession that so far is only focused on being back with his mother or his sand. He has a severe attachment to his sand, and I think it being locked away from him right next to him was part of his downfall. Kamodi definitely put it there purposely. Please tell me you removed this woman from that place. Oh, I am going to later today. When I visited the boy yesterday, I made sure to keep an eye on her. She is good at hiding her truth, but I am better. I have been mounting evidence all day here. He waved to the papers on his desk. Enough to warrant a search of her at a level I know would expose her. She will be arrested by the end of today. Any idea where the boy is, though? I would guess somewhere with sand. If I were on the run and able to control such a thing, I would make sure to be around it in surplus. I will help find the boy. All Might stood up. I am sure he will be found. Izuku had indeed gone where there was sand, to a beach called Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. It was filthy and covered with a bunch of trash, and that bothered Izuku to his core. All that trash was covering the beautiful sand. Izuku made it a goal to clean up all the trash so the sand can be free of the filth while he waits for a good time to go back to his mother. He wasted no time in using his true sand to crush all of the trash into small balls and set them aside. He started on the inside of the giant messy maze of trash so he wouldn't be immediately seen by someone happening to walk past the beach. After a while, close to dawn, Izuku got tired and realized how little he had eaten recently at the facility and how he needed food. He stopped crushing trash and used his sand to travel into the city, staying close to the beach so he wouldn't be too far from his new temporary living space. Izuku stopped outside of a small restaurant, one that had no signs and only had a counter, with no outer wall on the street side. It was more of a stand than a restaurant, really. Whatever was in the place being cooked, however, was enticing to Izuku, so he entered the small space. He wasn't exactly sure how places like this worked, so he just sat at the counter on a stool until someone would notice him. After a minute, an odd-looking woman exited the back and looked at him. She was pink, like her skin was entirely pink. She had violet hair that was all over the place despite being under a hairnet, and her eyes were completely violet as well except for yellow pupils. She had an apron over a yellow dress. Petting the child of No, she was most likely the one who was cooking whatever that smell he liked was. Hello, sweetie. The woman greeted him with a smile, while also looking around him. Where are your parents? My father is dead and my mother is with bad people. Izuku didn't know why he bothered to answer. He really didn't want to speak and just wanted that food. The pink woman frowned. That really didn't sound pleasant, but the way he said it made the feeling worse. Plus, she was now aware of his eyes and his expression that seemed like he really didn't care and might not be a happy person, and that he needed sleep. Well, who has been watching over you lately? Can I have food? Izuku ignored her question. The woman sighed. This boy really only spoke about what he wanted to. He looked hungry, so her motherly instincts said to at least indulge the odd boy. She also noticed he had sand flowing around his legs, and some if it was on the counter. I can get you a bowl if you at least keep the sand off of the counter. Izuku looked at his sand. He didn't see how it was an issue, but he wanted the food. The sand on the counter dropped to around his legs. The woman gave him a small smile as she went into the back to get the food. She came back a second later with a bowl of miso ramen, a pot she didn't expect to have customers for this early in the morning. Here you go. What is your name, kiddo? Izuku Midoriya. The 7-year-old replied. Well, I am Marina Ashido. The woman introduced herself. She recognized his name because he was mentioned on the radio on her walk to her stand. My husband had to be at one of those places too. Izuku looked up confused, the first time an emotion past anger or apathy crossed his face in a while. What? A quirk reformation center. He was a level 3. He didn't like it because he didn't think there was anything wrong with him. I think he would have left like you did. They took my sand and didn't let me have it. I wouldn't have enjoyed that. Izuku went back to silence. Tell you what. If you don't want to go back, I guess I can let you eat here until you don't want to. I wouldn't send my husband there, so I don't want to send a child there. Plus, if you were as badass they say I thought, no, you would have hurt them on the way out, or just took my ramen without a word. I didn't want to taint my sand before I returned to mother. That works, I guess.
Marina shrugged.
Part of her was saying that the kid should be under the watch of a professional, but she ignored that for the bigger part of her. The Ashido part of her that said in her gut that he wouldn't be a hassle to her. Just don't kill anyone, I guess. Izuku went back to eating. He wouldn't promise that. He didn't even think he would show up here ever again. He didn't trust her. Izuku suddenly felt weight on his sand and wanted to attack whoever was touching his sand. He turned to face the person before he ended them and was face to face with a girl his age. Have you ever built a sand castle with this? The girl asked really excitedly. She was pink like the woman who gave him the ramen, but her hair was also pink and she had horns in her hair. Her eyes actually intrigued Izuku because the scara was black and her irises were yellow. She had a large smile and was standing on some of his sand that wasn't falling under her weight. Izuku was silent and didn't respond. He kind of just stared at her blankly. Not his normal hateful or apathetic looks he gave everyone, but a true blank look. He didn't know what to think. She was on his sand, which was something he would have gotten mad about if the question wasn't so weird. The girl continued to look at him with her cheerful and curious look as she was touching the sand. Have you ever built a sandcastle with your sand? She repeated with the same enthusiasm. Mina, I told you to stay behind the counter.
Marina scolded.
She was worried her daughter might set off the child who was known to have violent reactions. Hey, sandcastle? Izuku finally spoke with a question. Yeah. Have you ever built one with this? I bet it would be so cool.
No.
He answered confused. He never had someone actually be excited about his sand since he first got it, and his parents were excited. However, he killed his father with it, and he scared his mother with it. Since then, everyone had wanted to lock it up or use it for some selfish reason. But this girl wanted to know if he ever built a sandcastle. You should totally build one. You would have the best sandcastle.
Mina exclaimed.
Why would I do that? For fun. Mina, dear, please get back behind the counter. What does a sandcastle look like exactly? Izuku asked. A castle. Mina answered with confusion. Do you not know? I do not remember. The pink girl scrunched up her face in thought before she snapped her fingers. Oh, I know. Without another word, she ran behind the counter into the kitchen. Mina, don't run in the kitchen.
Marina sighed.
She took her daughter to work with her so she wouldn't be left alone at home while her father was on a business trip that week. Marina was just glad that the boy didn't attack her daughter. Maybe he wasn't as bad as he was said to be. Izuku continued to eat his ramen in silence before Mina ran back out of the back with a picture book. She stayed behind the counter this time and sat across from Izuku. Like this. She opened the picture book to a page with a castle on it and moved the book towards the other kid. Izuku looked at the castle and recognized it. He had seen castles before and just forgot about them during his time in the Cherry Waters facility. I have not made one before. The pink girl pointed at the castle again. Can you make your sand look like that one? I could. Oh, please do it. Mina asked excitedly. Izuku didn't know why he was involving himself in the conversation. He didn't want to care about anything, but something about this girl was interesting. He moved his sand, and it began to shift itself into a small version of the castle. It's so pretty. The pink girl liked the castle. She poked it to feel the sand. Your sand is so cool. Izuku's cheeks turned the smallest possible shade of red that they could. He had never had someone say his sand was nice in any degree without their own selfish motives right behind it, especially over something so trivial. Sorry about Mina. Marina was back from the kitchen. She was so glad that Mina hadn't accidentally sent off the sand user. She knew she could handle the boy if he decided not to play nice with her quirk. Sue just didn't want Mina to set him off. I know she can be a handful. Dad says I am 2 handfuls.
Mina defended herself.
I don't mind. Izuku was still looking at Mina in complete confusion of her. He didn't know why he felt odd with her, and why she was so interested in his sand in such small ways. It was definitely different from the people at the facility. What else can you do with it? Mina poked the sand again. Hello. A booming voice got the attention of the people in the small establishment. They turned to see a massive, muscular, blond man who was big enough that his hair that was standing in the front in 2 long strands was against the ceiling. You wouldn't happen to be that Midoriya boy I heard about, right? Izuku's sand all swarmed to in front of him in defense of whatever would happen. Oh my gosh, it's All Might.
Mina exclaimed excitedly.
The man gave a slightly nervous chuckle at the actions of Izuku. Relax, Midoriya, my boy. I was just worried about where you are. Some nasty people want your sand, and I think you want to keep it for yourself. All Might sat at the counter 3 seats away from Izuku with the sand still in between them. He turned to Marina and Mina. Is it okay if we have the area, please? Marina looked at Izuku and nodded. For a minute, I suppose. She picked up her daughter and went into the kitchen. I don't want to go back to that place. Izuku wouldn't go back no matter what. I understand, Midoriya. You want to go back to your mother. All Might had talked more with Nizu and the chief of police in Mizudafu about something that he thinks could work for Izuku. The boy wasn't right in the head, that was for sure. But after some talking, he thinks he found a solution that would help the boy. She misses you, and we have an idea that will keep people from your sand that you don't want near it. How did you find me? Izuku asked his own question. All Might assumed Izuku would only talk if the conversation went to where he wanted it to go. Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. I figured you like sand and a beach has it. I appreciate you getting rid of some of that trash. It was ruining the sand. I agree. Miss Midoriya listened to an idea of mine, and she thinks that if you're like it, that it will work. Where is my mother? Currently at home. She misses you and wants to have you back. Someone at the facility has been proven to be of bad taste, so I thought it best for you to not go back at all. There is a different place. It will just be you and your mother. Only I, Nizu, a friend named Tsukachi, will know where it is. A few others will give food to you there, but this way you won't have people trying to mess with you. All Might hopes the boy would accept it. He knew the boy wasn't trusting, but it was the truth, and he hoped his mother being involved would help him believe. I don't believe you. Yeah, he definitely wasn't trusting. Would you trust your mother? Izuku looked at the man. My mother wouldn't lie to me. Let's go to her then. All Might said. I promise you, Midoriya, that I will make sure no one separates you from your mother or your sand. I just hope you don't use the sand in a way to harm those who don't deserve the harm. I make no promises. Izuku stated. I suppose my just asking should suffice for now. So will you come with me to your mother? Izuku looked at the man, and then got off of his stool. I will kill you if this is a lie. All Might believed they could easily defeat Izuku in a conflict, so he took no stress from that. It was alarming, however, how much he could hear the tone of Izuku's seriousness in that threat. Then it is good that she is our destination. The man began to leave. I want to say bye. Izuku didn't follow All Might out of the building. That is acceptable. All Might raised an eyebrow. He thought this kid had no emotional aptitude or care for anyone past his mother. Him saying bye felt random. Marina, who had been subtly listening, walked out of the kitchen. Goodbye, Midoriya. I meant her. Izuku pointed to the picture book still on the counter. Marina would have been insulted if she didn't know the kid wasn't right mentally. Well, she was insulted just the same.
Mina.
She called into the back for her daughter. Hello. Mina ran to the counter and tried to greet All Might. Hi, Mr. All Might. Hello, young one. All Might grinned at her enthusiasm.
Isn't Kaslaboy.
Mina turned to Izuku. Goodbye, pink girl. Izuku said his goodbye. No, it is Mina. The girl corrected. We're friends now, so first names. Friends? Izuku asked with confusion. Yep. Mina nodded hard. I am Mina to you now, and you can't change that. Okay. Izuku accepted it with an unknown feeling. I am Izuku then. Nice.
Mina grinned.
Bye, Izuku. Bye.
Mina.
Izuku nodded as he followed All Might out of the shop. If need be, I can hold you, and we can get there faster. All Might offered. I am fine with my sand. The sand user said as he followed behind All Might, trialing him on a pile of his sand, the rest of it swirling around his feet and calves. That is a way to travel. The man found it interesting that Izuku didn't have to move a muscle to control his sand. Heck, the boy was just standing there as his sand moved him through the air behind All Might. They eventually got to a small motel across from a gas station. It was on the outskirts of Mizudafu and not the final destination. It was just where the others were waiting. One was Nizu, and then there was Inko, and finally the third person was a police officer. He wasn't a plan officer, but one of the middle officers between regular law enforcement and pro-heroes. The man had his eyes shut, not opening them for a second. His hair was bone white and tied back in a low knot that reached his shoulders. His plain navy blue uniform did little to hide the fact that he had a strong bill as well. He looked intimidating, but gave off a calm energy instead despite his appearance. Hello, All Might, Izuku. Nizu greeted them. Hello, Nizu. All Might smiled. He turned to the third person, the officer. Hello, Rhea. The man now identified as Rhea nodded without a word. Why is the police here? Izuku asked. This is a system of trust. Rhea answered. His voice sounded toneless, like anything past monotone wasn't something he could do. He still hadn't opened his eyes, but his face was aimed directly at Izuku. You are known and registered as a level 5 QMD. It would be unwise for us in law enforcement to not know where you are. Rhea is trustworthy, Nizu said. While your condition is something to worry us, it is clear that you don't trust us and others will try to take advantage of your being a level 5 quirk mental disorder. It is not the best idea, but you being away from everyone would be best for the time being. Of course, we couldn't leave a child by himself, and you clearly don't want anything to do with anyone past your mother. So I agreed to move to this new spot that only we here would really know of. Inko continued. As much as she was admittedly afraid of her son's sand and his insanity, he still loves her, and she as a mother wanted the best for him. Izuku silently got off of his sand and approached his mother, hugging her tightly and not letting go. We should get you to the safe house, Nizu said. They didn't get to arrest Sayuri Kamodi because she had inexplicably disappeared. He knew that there were definitely other methods that would be used to go after Izuku for his mental state, and quirk were a golden opportunity to villains to try to manipulate for their own goals. If they took him far away from anywhere, he would be fine, especially since there was no way they would know at this point where he would be besides a group of no less than 10 people. It might not be the best thing to do with a kid like Izuku, but with the looming idea of that villain having interest in Izuku was not good. /N. That's the end of the first chapter. More will be stated in Chapter 2 regarding Izuku and his condition if this wasn't enough. Izuku's not going to be a straight-up villain, but he obviously isn't going to be a perfect acting hero. I also haven't finished with his quirks powers yet since I didn't think he should have them all yet at the age of 7. I don't know if it is just me being critical of what I do, but some of his interaction with All Might feels out of the character I built for Izuku, but also feels in character as well because he wants his mom. Izuku's personality is kinda just going to become like Gaara's from the beginning of Naruto somewhat. Not him constantly saying he wants his existence proven or blood and the whatnot, but more like could and violent when provoked. I also know who is getting OFA in this story, and it isn't Izuku. His quirk is pretty OP, and he is not mentally right enough to be the person who gets it. Anyways, that's all I gotta say. Thank Reaping Demon for asking me about the beginning of an idea for this story, and it getting started. Let me know how it was and have a good day. Chapter 2. /N. I don't own MHA or any Naruto references here. When they reached the safe house, it was revealed to be a cabin in a small section of some woods, right on the coastline above a small cliff with a barren strip of beach surrounded by rocks that made it an uneasy place to get to. Only we know where this cabin is, Nizu said as the car was parked. It has electricity, a hidden signal so you can connect to us through the phones or through the internet if need be, and the owner was fine with you taking the space. Who is the owner? Inko asked. Rhea is. All Might answered. I use this location to train or clear my head. Rhea spoke for the first time in a while. His eyes were still closed, and they haven't seen them open once yet. Are you sure it will be okay? Inko asked, not wanting to impede on the man. I am all right with the use of the location. It was used in a similar manner for myself. The man answered as he unlocked the door. Inko was the only one who found it odd that he was doing everything with his eyes closed. The two other men were aware of how he was doing that, and Izuku didn't care. He was only paying attention enough to hear them speak while following them. Sir, may I ask why you have your eyes closed? Inko hoped she wasn't going to offend him. I do not like light. It burns my eyes. How can you see? My quirk lets me use energy I call ki. I can use it to feel the area around me, as well as attack or defend if need be. It is very useful. All Might agreed. He always thought Rhea could have been a full-on pro hero, but the man chose his career already. I will show you the rooms. Rhea began a tour of the nice cabin. Izuku stopped following them through the building when they passed the Zen garden. The sand was calling to him, so he silently walked away from the group to go to it. They noticed him walking away, but were okay with it seeing him go to the sand. Izuku stood on the edge of the garden and contemplated standing on it. Sand always felt nice, but he didn't want it yet because the waves and designs of the sand in the garden were beautiful. He made sure to remember the designs. Quite a bit of time passed, and he didn't move an inch, looking at the sand with fascination. Nizu and All Might left from Yuzufu, and Inko didn't want to interrupt her son, so she went inside to get more accustomed to the new home. Rhea, however, decided to at least interact with the child who would be living at his second home. He had approached Izuku's side to face the garden himself. It is beautiful, isn't it? I like it. I do too, but probably not for the same reason. Izuku didn't know if he actually cared about the man's reason. He got a different vibe from Rhea than he did from the others. It felt familiar in a way, comforting somehow. Rhea didn't even try to continue talking with Izuku. He is a hard person to talk to half of the time as well, so he didn't blame the boy. He understood where it came, so he wouldn't push anything. A year later, the Midoriyas had fallen into a routine at the safe house. Inko had started a garden of vegetables and flowers in the space close to the Zen garden, and would spend a good amount of time keeping the house looking nice and tending to her plants. Izuku still slept very little. He claimed he didn't like it, so he would spend a good portion of his night at the small enclosed beach and interact with the sand. His control was much better on his true sand, the sand he had soaked his blood into, than it was with any other sand. He could control all sand with ease, but the true sand was able to move quicker than any other. He didn't add any new sand to his true batch since moving to the area, not wanting to just take the sand from its home. He kept the sand from his escape key since it had made use to him in getting back his sand. Rhea would always show up every 4 days and stay for a day. He said it was so that he could regain control of his ki in a safe environment. Over time, and he would gradually start to lose his sense of self, but the Zen garden would help him. He never went into detail or conversed much with the Midoriyas unless they spoke to him, Inko being the one to talk, mostly wanting to know how things were in Mizutofu and Japan in general. Izuku never tried to conversate with Rhea because he didn't even know what the two would talk about. but they both would occasionally just gaze at the Zen garden like they did the first day. They both never touched the Zen garden. Izuku liked how it was put when he first got there, and Rhea liked it as well because of who had done that to the Zen garden. All Might would check up on them once a week, feeling personally that Inko would prefer to see a person who could socialize once in a while. He was the one who actually suggested that Inko grow a vegetable garden. The man tried to conversate with Izuku at least once every time he is there, but the boy really didn't ever want to speak to people. Inko said he was such a talker before the facility. She didn't like how he had become an untrusting shut-in because of his time at the Quirk Reformation Center. If anything, they believed that place really only made it worse for Izuku. I won't be here next week because a friend from my early hero days wants me to come to America for a bit, All Might told Inko on a visit. I should be back about 8 days from now. That's okay. I still have Izu for company, Inko said as she heard the sound of the door by the garden opening. The two actually had to look to see if Izuku was coming into that room because he walks way too silently, and it was actually a bit unnerving how he can sometimes just end up right next to them without them knowing when he actually had something to say. He did enter the room, and his eyes were immediately on All Might as he got closer. Something All Might wished the boy wouldn't do because he never spoke until he was close and those insane eyes bothered everyone. I have a problem. The boy spoke as he finished walking up to the muscular hero. Oh. The pro-hero raised an eyebrow. The kid didn't seem like one to let others know about anything. What is the matter, young Midoriya? I want to get rid of the trash at that beach. Is there trash on the beach down the trail? Inko asked. The beach I was at before he found me. Izuku looked at All Might. Dagoba Beach? All Might asked. Is the idea of the trash bothering you? It is ruining the sand. I don't like it. Izuku said flatly to the man. I suppose I can take you there, and we can clean it up. The pro-hero offered. Go where? The voice of Rhea suddenly made everyone aware that he had entered. Young Midoriya here wants to go to Dagoba Municipal Beach in Mizudafu to clean it of the trash there. The trash is unsightly, and it would be beneficial to the community there if we clean the park. The filth is ruining the sand, Izuku stated. Rhea thought for a single second before the man who never opens his eyes looked in All Might's direction. You shouldn't go. I shouldn't. The pro-hero got confused. Izuku gained an irritated look at Rhea, not liking the man saying no. You will attract attention even in the trash, All Might, sir. Rhea explained. I am an unnoticeable person, so I will take him that way. There is no chance of your fame getting his hidden location revealed. Izuku dropped his irritated look as quickly as it was gained, pleased to hear he can go clean the sand still. All Might rubbed his arm. I suppose that is a valid point. Are you okay enough to be there though, Rhea? The man thought that Rhea was at the house to regain control of his quirk. I should be all right for the day. I have no cases, so I can take a day more to regain control. Rhea answered. He turned back to the door, but spoke to Izuku. I am all right to go whenever you are, Midoriya. That was all Izuku needed to hear before he looked to his mother, said bye, and was out the door with his sand following him. Inko looked at All Might. Can Mr. Rhea handle Izu? He has more in common with the boy than we do. All Might replied. This is indeed filthy. Rhea commented in his emotionless voice as he could feel the trash with his quirk, his eyes still closed. He didn't like how filthy the beach was either. I hate them for ruining the sand, Izuku stated as his sand already shot forward and crushed a thing of metal. He didn't know exactly did this, but he had hate for them regardless. I believe I have an idea of how you can remove this trash quickly, Rhea said after a minute of standing close by. He wanted for the sand-wielding boy to stop and look at him before speaking again. I believe you can control all sand, correct? Izuku nodded. Take a second to get all of the sand under your control to crush it all in one move. Izuku blinked, not thinking of that yet. He nodded to show his understanding and brought his sand back to himself as he went farther onto the beach. That way he would be closer to more sand. He took a breath and began to feel every grain on the beach in the area around him for 20 meters. Going with that feeling like he had practiced before he willed the sand to listen to him and felt the sand begin to move, listening to his call. Rhea watched as sand began to swirl in a large circle around the boy before it engulfed a good fourth of the trash on the beach, with more sand following to grab as much as it could. Izuku saw that he had all of the trash he could hold with his current amount of sand a bit of time after that, and began to crush all of the filth with the sand from the beach, compacting it all with force until all of the trash was a dense ball the size of a small apartment. He moved it to right off of the sand before he made the sand repeat the process with another large section of the trash on the beach. Izuku did this for another 20 minutes before all of the trash on the beach was crushed into dense balls and removed from the beach. When he finished, he just stood next to Rhea and looked at the silent man. All of the trash is removed from the beach, the boy stated as he released all of the sand from his control back to its place on the beach. I shall inform someone who can remove the trash to a different location. The man replied. For now, we can return to the safe house. The man began to walk towards his vehicle and Izuku followed until he just stopped, staring barely visible stand from where he was. Izuku remembered the year prior when he met that odd pink girl at the stand, and something in him wanted to go back to the place. So he did. Floating on his sand, he just left Rhea to go to the stand. Rhea, of course, noticed the boy leaving, and instead of telling Izuku to come back, he silently turned and followed the sand using Child to see what caused him to veer off of their path. Izuku stopped his sand right as he got to the entrance to the stand and stepped off of his sand to enter the shop. It looked mostly the same as it did the last time he was here, except for there being actual customers this time. The boy sat away from the two adults who were also sitting at the counter and also talking to the woman he saw before, the mother of the pink girl. Marina, how is Udon doing these days? One of the customers, a woman whose most noticeable feature was her large, spiky, white hair, asked. Most of her face was obscured by the hair, save the bottom half of her face. He is okay after the accident, right? The other customer, a man with no hair, but a spiky head nonetheless, asked. He doesn't like having to stay home in bed.
Marina answered.
He misses the shop, but his leg can't have pressure on it for at least 5 more days. I take it Mina isn't being helpful with her energy? The man chuckled. Izuku actually paid attention at that point, hearing the name of the pink girl.
Mina. Pfft. Marina laughed.
She has made herself a maid, as she puts it, and is constantly bugging Udon to help him for even just breathing at this point. It's cute, but geez, does the girl not let up. Rhea walked in at that point, having seen exactly where Izuku had when he moved to sit beside the boy, just assuming he wanted food. The pink woman noticed Izuku and Rhea at that point. Hello. Welcome to my stand. She passed Rhea a small menu. We are out of dumplings today, but everything else is good to go. She then looked at Izuku, wondering why the kid looked familiar, and then noticed his sand that was behind him and remembered the year prior. Hello again, kid. Izuku didn't say anything but did look at her. Seems like a normal response. Marina commented to herself. She turned to Rhea. What would you like, honey? 1 bowl of miso ramen. The man answered for himself. Would you like that too, sweetie? Marina asked Izuku. Yes. Izuku replied after a second. Your bowls will be up in a minute. The violet-haired woman smiled before she turned to the kitchen. Rhea turned to Izuku's direction. You have been here before. Just once. The day All Might brought me back to Mother. What made you want to come back? I don't know. Their emotionless conversation ended there, showing how little the two really spoke in general. They sat in silence until Marina returned with their food. You know, Marina started after she had given them their bowls. Mina was kinda upset she made a cool friend only to ever see him once before he seemingly just disappeared.
I'm sorry.
Izuku responded, making the man next to him raise an eyebrow. Marina also looked a bit surprised. It's fine. Izuku didn't speak again, going completely silent. Rhea went silent as well, contemplating something. The two silently ate for the rest of their time there at the stand and left, Rhea paying for the meal. Next time I hope Mina is here so she can see her favorite sand buddy, Marina said on the guy's way out. Those were the last words spoken to or among Izuku and Rhea for a majority of their way back to the cabin, the silence only being broken by Rhea once they had gone off of the main path towards his cabin. I believe that with the beach now clean, people might start to show up to it again. Maybe this time they will not allow it to be ruined, the man said as he walked alongside the boy who was floating on his sand. Izuku didn't reply for a minute. I won't be happy if they ruin the sand again. It would ruin the beach's natural beauty. Rhea agreed with Izuku. The two entered the home and Inko was relieved to see them, hugging her son. "Welcome home, Izu. We cleaned the beach, mother," Izuku stated. "The entire beach?" Inko looked at her son with surprise, and then Rhea. "His control of sand is remarkable," the man stated. "He cleaned the entire beach himself in less than an hour. I used the beach to clean the trash," the sand-using boy added. "That's amazing," the mother responded. "I am sorry to abruptly leave, but I must go regain control of my ki now," Rhea said as he gave a small polite bow and then left for the Zen garden. "Do you need any food now, Izu?" Inko turned to her son. She imagined he might be hungry after cleaning an entire beach like that. Izuku shook his head. "We had ramen." "You did? Can I go back there again?" Izuku asked suddenly, surprising himself as well with the question. "To the beach? To the ramen place?" She didn't know Izuku's exact reason, but she was assuming he was also confused about it. "Why don't we both go in a week? I can ask All Might for a chance for us to leave the house and go get ramen from this place." Izuku nodded. "Thank you, mother." Izuku entered the garden area an hour later and Rhea was in the spot he normally was, standing next to the Zen garden. The sand user stood next to the garden, also like he has for the last year, every few days with the man, but did something he had never done before at this time. He spoke to Rhea. "Why do you admire the sand?" Izuku actually was curious about the man now, most likely due to the mysterious man who never opened his eyes actually going with Izuku to clean the beach. The man turned his head to face Izuku's direction before he spoke, having a smile as he remembered the reason. "Her name was Emilia." Izuku gained a look of confusion, never hearing of an Emilia before that moment. "She made the garden?" "She did. Emilia was an amazing woman, and the only person who had ever made me feel normal." The boy's confusion only got bigger. "Normal? I am a level 5 QMD as well," Rhea answered. The boy's confusion turned to shock. This man was like him? But then why did everyone else not treat Rhea like a dangerous bomb like they did to him? "You are?" "I have severe emotional disattachment from my surroundings and issues controlling my quirk, which if I lose control can have severe consequences for all persons around me," Rhea explained. "I used to have extreme anger as well, but that is something that has long just eroded away with sadness." Why do they treat you normal?" "They don't. I am treated very much like the phrase of a ticking time bomb. Ever since I lost control several years ago. I, however, do not notice anymore, I suppose. Years of the treatment make it seem normal almost." Was Emilia like them? "She was amazing. She didn't see my problems as dangerous like everyone else. In fact, I was the first one to even bring up what I was diagnosed with. She didn't see me any different after learning it all." Izuku asked a question again. "Where is she?" Rhea didn't answer immediately. "She passed away 5 years ago from cancer." The garden got quiet, those words ending the discussion for a bit. "Her garden is beautiful," Izuku said quietly as he continued to look at the Zen garden that hasn't had its sand moved in 5 years. Rhea nodded. "It is indeed." Rhea and Izuku didn't talk again during the rest of Rhea's time at the cabin, but not because they were avoiding each other. The two still weren't people for conversations after all. Izuku was still in surprise of Rhea's being on the same level of that scale the others used on him. It made Izuku see him differently than just the guy whose cabin they were hiding at. He felt more real to Izuku now. Inko called All Might while he was on his way to America, and the man wasn't against the Midoriyas going to the ramen at all. He even knew why Izuku would want to, and told Inko to just wait for something pink. Rhea agreed to make sure they would be safe while getting the food, but he also recommended Izuku put his sand somewhere it wouldn't draw attention. Izuku then said he wanted his sand always with him, so he grabbed the closest thing that could contain the sand and was holding a calabash-shaped gourd that was half of his size. At first, Inko was worried about how heavy it would be for him to carry the gourd everywhere, but Izuku claimed that his sand following him how it does made the gourd weightless, so all he did was use a strap to keep it on him to not make it as odd. Inko was the one driving them as Rhea's inability to keep his eyes open made it difficult for him to do any driving, and it would push his quirk to drive with it active enough to sense anything while driving. Izuku stayed in the back seat with his new gourd, making it was okay since it had become the container of his sand for now, and that made it actually mean something to him. Before they went to the ramen stand, Inko wanted to look at the beach and was amazed by the sights, having once saw it in its trashed state. She praised Izuku, which made him gain a smile on his face. At the stand there wasn't any customers but Marina, who was cleaning a couple of bowls with her back to them, only turning when she heard them sit down. She saw Izuku first. "You know, I am really thinking you like my ramen kid." She had a smile. "And you always seem to bring more people each time. I think you are now on the list of my best customers." "Hello, I am his mother, Izuku Midoriya." Inko introduced herself. "I thought you looked similar to the kid. I am Marina Ishido, and I can serve you folks once I wash my hands." The woman was glad to see the kid she admittedly thought was weird, and not in a bad way, had his mom watching over him. After a minute, she returned to them. "So where is the sand right now?" Izuku just pointed to the gourd. "At least tell me you can have a conversation." Marina looked at Inko pleadingly. The emerald-haired mother laughed. "I can have a conversation. Izu can too when he wants to. I don't doubt it. So what ramen would you all like?" "I would enjoy the miso ramen," Rhea stated. "Miso?" Izuku said the one word. "I would like some tonkatsu ramen, please." Inko said her order with more emotion than both Izuku and Rhea combined. "Gotcha." The pink woman nodded as she went to go get the food start. "I guess you made an impression on Miss Ishido, Izu," Inko said to her son. "She gave me ramen when I was hiding on the beach." "She found you on the beach?" "I found this place while hungry. She gave me food here. I am glad she made sure you weren't going hungry." A second later, a pink blur shot out of the kitchen and to the counter.
I am Mina.
The pink girl introduced herself to everyone. "Mina, don't be a handful." Marina was heard calling out from the kitchen. Mina ignored her mother's words when she noticed Izuku and instantly remembered him.
Isamboy.
"Wait, no."
Izata.
Izuku just blinked, not expecting to see the girl who was odd to him, but after his name was said wrong he spoke. "It's Izuku." "Sorry, Izuku." Mina didn't lose her pep at all. "Are you still making cool sandcastles?" "Wait, where is your sand? Did you leave it at home? Is it in a castle right now? Can you get sand from the beach over there? Can you make castles from all sand? Or is it just the sand you left at home? What is that thing on your back? Is it a backpack? It looks cool. Mine is purple with blue stuff that looks like water. Why does yours look like a pot? Is it because of the school you go to? What school do you go to?" "I go to Dash."
Mina.
Marina stopped her daughter from asking non-stop questions without taking a breath or allowing Izuku to answer any of them. "Let him answer the first question before you ask more. We talked about this girl, geez." She was snickering at the end of it because she saw the poor boy who had her daughter's attention looking so confused. Mina blushed in embarrassment, turning violet on her cheeks. "Sorry, Izuku." Izuku still looked confused because she asked most of those too fast for him to actually know the full questions. "What were the questions?" "Oh, are you still making cool sandcastles?" Mina asked the first question. "I do sometimes," Izuku admitted. Inko then figured out why Izuku made sandcastles occasionally and just sat there with them. She figured that this girl must be interesting to her son and got him to make a castle before, and with his odd fascination with most things, the sandcastle building just stuck to him. "Are they big castles?" Mina asked. "Can you make sand dragons to guard them? And sand knights to fight the sand dragon?"
Mina.
Let him answer the first question. The pink mother repeated with mild exasperation as she came back with the ramen. "Can you make sand dragons?" Mina asked what she considered the most important question at the moment. "I have never tried," Izuku answered. "If you had your sand, I bet you could. Your sand is cool." Inko was surprised to see her son actually turn red, and then she smiled, happy to see her son give an emotional reaction to someone who isn't her. "I have my sand," Izuku replied as his sand popped out of the gourd. The pink girl's eyes became stars. "Cool. Now you can make dragons." "Not in the stand." Marina nipped that idea in the bud. "Mina, no quirks in the stand." "Sorry, Sandboy, but no one is allowed to do shenanigans here after the little squirt broke a few of my bowls and a shelf." "It was only 3 bowls."
Mina defended herself.
"Why don't the two play afterwards?" Inko asked. "If it is okay with you, ma'am."
Yes. Mina shouted.
At the beach. Mom can't say no sand there. Marina just looked at her daughter flatly. What mother says goes. Please.
Mina pleaded.
The pink mother looked at Izuku, who was just blank-faced in his seat, and then back at her daughter. She was fully aware of his condition, but doubted he would do anything bad at this point. Did you even ask him if he wanted to play? That made the pink girl spin around in a flash to lean over the counter towards Izuku. Do you want to play at the beach? It is really clean now and looks pretty. Izuku's face went from blank with slight red to straight confused. No one has asked to play with him in years. He didn't even know really anymore how to play. Yes. Yay. A white-haired man looked at the woman who was kneeling to him. The woman was Sayuri Kamodi, and her once bright orange hair had dulled to a faded brown and went all over the place. He had grown impatient with her over her lack of being able to find the boy she had said would make a perfect tool, and felt like just sending her off to some random desk job to handle accounts or something and stop being a disappointment to him. Master all for one, I have knowledge of where he might be after all. The woman said from her spot kneeling before him, not looking up at him. The man raised an eyebrow. Is that so? The boy you have said had control of sand, or one of your other projects? The boy with the sand, Izuku Midoriya. I have found him, and he has someone guarding him that you might be interested in. The man nodded. Go on. Who might this person be? All Might. Sayuri looked up at this point, just in time to see an evil grin break All for One's so far calm expression. If that is true, then I will go for the boy myself. You will come to sedate the boy if need be. We go in 3 days. The man turned around to go make sure he can prepare to crush the #1 hero and secure a new underling. Inko had an amused look as she watched the pink girl trying to do so much on the beach while Izuku just stood there looking confused. Your son certainly is special, Marina said from beside Inko. It's hard to not get annoyed at Mina and her antics. He is definitely special. For a level 5 QMD, he is not what people make them up to be. Inko looked at the pink woman in surprise. What? Marina waved her arm in disregard. Don't worry, Mississippi. I have known since the first time he was at my stand. He hasn't done anything bad yet. Even if he did, I think I can handle him. His sand is quite powerful. So is my water. I control water just like he does with sand. The pink woman stated. He might be able to weaponize the beach, but I can weaponize the ocean. Inko looked at her in shock. Really? Yeah, but it always gives me a sick stomach.
Marina laughed.
I can handle it for like 2 minutes before I can't move a drop of water at all without losing my lunch. Inko laughed as well at that point. He is all right, though. Marina continued. If anything, I say the biggest issue is trying to get him to talk. Make the biggest and coolest sandcastle possible. Mina was heard shouting excitedly before a large chunk of the beach was pulled up into a castle by Izuku, who moved his arm slightly to move the sand. Inko was surprised Izuku was listening to the pink girl at all. Then again, maybe she was just weird to Izuku, and Izuku was just going along with everything until he found out why she was weird to him. Rhea just stood off to the side, not really in particular concern, but keeping a watch on Izuku's ki from where he was, making sure he would be able to react in case of a fluctuation. He, however, didn't believe there would be any problem, believing if anything this pink girl would be Izuku's Amelia if anything, but hopefully without the sad ending. /n. I felt like ending this chapter without mention of AFO at all and just making that a surprise, but I decided that nah. You guys get that suspense LMAO. Rhea is going to get more development as the story goes. He is important as a mentor to Izuku in the story, seeing as how he is the one Izuku can actually see and respect enough for that. His quirk is basically low-budget chakra from Naruto, but without any elements to it. Maybe one day you guys will get to see his real eyes. I don't really got much else to say, but I guess look forward to the next chapter of the story. I have a Discord now, guys. It is all 7 if my current story's on it, and a few admittedly stupid people, myself included, AMD more, are always welcome to join and discuss the stories you like, or propose new stories to me and so on. Here is the link. Hope you guys enjoyed the new chapter. Let me know how it was and have a good day.